Welcome into Outkick the Show. I'm your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you have had fantastic weekends wherever you may be across this great country, across this great land. We, of course, are off and running, getting ready for Lock It In. I'm actually going to hop on Fox News here in a few minutes as well. But there are so many different stories to get to. I want you to prepare for an absolute avalanche of incredible stories. By the way, props to Nash for making me this bracelet today. He said he gave it to me because I let him stay up last night and watch the NFL. So there you go. There you go. You let your kids watch football, you get rewarded. Nash is 4 and he's in pre-K now. All right, a lot of different things to get to. Let's start right off the top with my Tennessee Titans disemboweling, destroying, absolutely decapitating the Cleveland Browns. This was all the talk off season was about Baker, was about OBJ, was about Jarvis Landry, Nick Chubb, all the talent that was swarming all over this NFL universe. And what happens? What happens? Everybody comes out on the Browns bandwagon, and the Titans put forth their best performance in an opening game since they moved to the state of Tennessee, the best performance they've had in an opening game since 1991. I absolutely loved everything about this game. In particular, I loved the Titans' pass rush. I liked the secondary play. I liked Derrick Henry being utilized. I liked A.J. Brown being broken out, going for 100 yards receiving in his NFL debut, if you guys remember. I loved the draft pick of A.J. Brown and what he did at Ole Miss. I absolutely love every single element of it, all right? Now, here's what I told you was going to happen with the Cleveland Browns. I said that I didn't like the hype train. I didn't like the way Baker Mayfield was behaving, shotgunning beers, talking trash about other quarterbacks. In the entire history of Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, can you ever remember anything that either has said that's really been controversial in any way? No, of course not. That's because they're so focused on being quarterbacks, they don't want to add motivation to the opponents that they're going up against. I think the Titans wanted to come out and absolutely dominate because partly they were motivated by all the attention and all the talk from Baker Mayfield. And as a result, Titans dominated. Now, the Browns are in trouble, I think, right now. If you look at the Browns' schedule, here's how the Browns' schedule goes from here. They have to, from right here, go to play Monday Night Football against the Jets. The Jets collapsed against the Bills. And now that's basically a do-or-die game for both. Because after the Browns play against the Jets, they come back home against the Rams. Then they go on the road against the Ravens. Then shortly thereafter, they get to go all the way across the country to play against the 49ers. And then I believe in short succession after that, they play the Patriots. And I can't remember the other team off the top of my head. But it's possible they're 2-5 or 1-6 through the first 7 games. This was a beatdown of epic proportions. Epic, unbelievable, destructive proportions that the Titans put on Baker Mayfield. The man had 3 interceptions. The Browns had 18 penalties in the game, their most in 70 years, all right? As if that were not enough. They got their left tackle kicked out for kicking somebody in the head. They lost right in the process. They lost everybody. They had so many personal foul penalties. I loved everything about it. I loved everything about this beatdown. It's rare that I've been more optimistic in the last 10 or 15 years about the Tennessee Titans. I think the Titans are going to come back home and beat the Colts and then go on the road and beat the Jags and start off 3-0. I loved everything about it. That's my thoughts on the Titan side. On the Browns side, this is what happens. They have a bunch of front-running divas. Odell Beckham Jr. played in a $350,000 watch, which is ridiculous. And as a result, by the way, don't question my choice in topics. If you question my choice in topics, you die. Kyle Fowler, you are dead forever. You will never be allowed to come in here again. I happen to look over number one rule. I make every decision. This is not a democracy. It's a clayocracy. And if you are not respecting the picks And I happened to look over, and if you're not respecting the topics, you are gone forever. Forever banished from being able to comment. Now, you might get away with it for a little while, but when I happen to glance over and I think, would a loser be saying this? And the answer is yes, you are done. You are done. This is my show. Every topic is a topic I care about. I really don't care what anybody else thinks. You know what you do when you care about what everybody else thinks? You end up being a loser who's all worried about what people are going to think about your opinions. Guess what? I don't do that. Losers don't dictate choices to winners. Your boy here's a winner, all right? You guys, if you're questioning the topics, big fat losers like the Cleveland Browns. Talked all off season. Browns did. And then when they showed up and it came time to put up or shut up, they got crushed. They got dominated. And I absolutely loved every minute of it. The Browns are in trouble. I think the Browns are in significant trouble because when you have front runners, if things go great, everybody's a spectacular teammate. When things start to go bad, you start to fall apart. And that's what happened to the Browns right now. All right, Antonio Brown managed to work his way to the Patriots. And I think it makes the Patriots even more detestable. Here's the deal. On Friday night, Antonio Brown puts out a video, and I think this is indicative of a larger issue. Antonio Brown's addicted to social media. And this is a lesson that I think a lot of people need to learn. Everybody's got to stop being so obsessed with their brands in the world of pro sports and athletics in general. The only reason your brand matters is if you are good at sports. Otherwise, your brand of focus and awareness and caring is totally wasted. Michael Jordan's never been on social media. He's the biggest brand in the history of global sports. Peyton Manning is still the front person for every product, it feels like, in the country when it comes to commercials, and he's been retired for several years, never been on social media. Tom Brady wasn't on social media when he became super famous, and he only got onto it later in his career when he starts to decide he wants to make money off TB12. Charles Barkley is the most influential member of the sports media. He's not on social media. I got to give credit to Jamie Horowitz, who's now the number 2 guy at DAZN, for saying this. He said, look, when you become famous, social media should be a megaphone for you at most. Skip Bayless doesn't follow anybody. He just throws all his opinions out there. He doesn't interact. He's the star, right? If you are the star, the idea that Antonio Brown is out here needing to put up Instagram memes and Facebook posts or whatever the hell else it is, just do your job. Dominate in football, and you will make far more money than you will off of social media. In fact, I think there's a strong argument that Antonio Brown has cost himself substantial money. Now, the Patriots went and signed him for $10 million. Big question is, did Antonio Brown intentionally get released by the Raiders? Is he some grand genius and this was his plan? No, I don't think so. I think Antonio Brown uses social media like most addicts use whatever they are addicted to as a means to further the addiction. All right? I think this is legitimately true. I think there are a lot of people addicted to social media. And I think they need that dopamine hit. They need that whatever it is that leads to them being obsessed with reading their mentions. And by the way, I would say this about our president too. The president of the United States, and certainly a wide receiver in the NFL, don't need to be reading mentions, right? Kevin Durant is one of the 2 best in the world at what he does. And he's reading mentions and creating fake burner accounts to respond to people. What in the world are you doing? Get off of social media. You are a superstar. You're one of the 2 best in the world at what you do. Antonio Brown might be the best in the world at what he does. It is absolutely of zero help. And anybody out there who's arguing, oh, it helps Trump. No, it doesn't. It might help him get elected. It's not helping him be president. All right? Good lesson that I have learned in life. What got you there won't keep you there. It's an important lesson that I think a lot of people don't understand. What gets you to success usually will not keep you successful. You have to work harder and learn the new rules that apply to you when you become successful. The President of the United States, Donald Trump, would get reelected if he would tweet a lot less. If he would tweet Infinitely less he would win in 2020. If he loses, it's going to be because of the way, in my opinion, he uses Twitter. Because the economy's on fire. Unemployment rate's insanely low. Stock market's on fire. All of the actual metrics by which you would want to run an electoral campaign would suggest the president's going to get reelected. Same thing's true with Antonio Brown. Dude, your numbers speak for themselves. You're going to get paid, son. Don't make bad decisions on social media. Having said that, I don't blame the Patriots for coming in and getting him at a relatively reduced price. They get him for $10 million. If Patriots have shown, if you won't play by our rules, we'll kick you to the curb. We're not going to play the game. If Antonio Brown couldn't get along with Mike Tomlin, and if he couldn't get along with John Gruden, two of the most legendary players, coaches there have ever been, then I think it's unlikely he's going to get along with Bill Belichick unless he ships up and starts behaving in a normal fashion, right? As is, I think the Patriots, even without Antonio Brown, looked like the best team in football last night when they win 33-3 over the Steelers. But the Patriots have proven if you don't get on board the good ship Belichick and do your job, they don't care who you are, they'll kick you to the curb. So now the question for Antonio Brown is, will he be Randy Moss? Because as dominant as Tom Brady has been, remember, he's only really played with one definite Hall of Fame wide receiver in his career, Randy Moss. So will Antonio Brown be Randy Moss or will he be Ocho Cinco? Because remember, a lot of people forget the Patriots brought in Chad Ochocinco and he didn't work. Didn't work out. It was a disaster, and he went right off the good ship Belichick. The question for Antonio Brown is, will he ship up? Will he join the Patriots and do his job? That's what they want, right? Belichick doesn't want drama. He wants you to do his job. Which one is Antonio Brown going to be like? Ocho Cinco, or is he going to be like Randy Moss? We still don't know which one Josh Gordon's going to be, by the way, but he's had off-the-field issues with substance abuse, so it's really pretty difficult to figure out exactly how that's all going to shake out. Having said that, I asked you guys, after the Patriots win last night, how many of you would take the Patriots versus the field? 60% of you said you would take the Patriots. It's a bad bet to take the Patriots versus the other 31 teams, but given the dominance the Patriots have put forward, I understand why people don't want to run in the opposite direction from supporting right now the Patriots as the odds-on favorite to win the Super Bowl. All right, let's talk about Jameis Winston. Did you watch Jameis Winston play? I watch every game on the NFL, right? I got the televisions on. I'm watching everything. Everybody said all offseason, Jameis Winston's going to be great with Bruce Arians. Bruce Arians is a quarterback whisperer. He's going to fix him. Jameis Winston was atrocious in the first performance in Bruce Arians' offense for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He threw 6 balls that could have been intercepted and maybe should have been intercepted. He threw 2 returned pick sixes for touchdowns, including one on what could have been the winning drive of the game, and he threw another interception. He's awful. It's time for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to run in the opposite direction from Jameis Winston. And by the way, if you think your area of the country is taking it on the chin when it comes to bad football, this is a pretty extraordinary stat that I saw last night from my guy Brett McMurphy. The worst area right now in the country, when you think about where football is the worst right now, through a couple of weeks. I want to hit you with it. Worst area of the country, Tampa and South Florida, Miami area. The Bucs lost. The Miami Dolphins were atrocious. We'll get to them in a second. The FIU, FAU, the University of Miami, and South Florida, that's all the major football teams in Tampa and in Miami, are a combined 0-10 so far this year. Let me repeat that. The Miami Dolphins, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, FIU, FAU, the Central South Florida, and the Miami Dolphins, and the University of Miami, a combined 0-10. That, my friends, is pretty bad when you break it down in that respect. Jameis Winston is done. It's time for the Band-Aid to be ripped off. Anybody out there who's still arguing that Jameis is better than Marcus Mariota is an insane man, or they're related to Jameis Winston, or they're Jameis Winston's burner accounts. Marcus Mariota went out, 3 touchdown passes, led his team to a victory. He's had 3 straight years where his team has had winning records. He's taken his team to the postseason and won a game. This argument is over. Number 1 versus number 2. I don't know how good Mariota is going to be, but I know he's not going to be as bad as Jameis Winston. This is over. Maybe the Bucs have just decided to tank for Tua, but they don't even have a good backup now, so they don't have anybody to go to like last year when they could have Ryan Fitzpatrick come in and rescue him. All right, let's talk about the Tennessee Volunteer mess. This was a unmitigated disaster for Tennessee in the final 30 seconds of the game. There is no way to justify giving up that pass play with 30 seconds left. Having said that, for 59 minutes and 30 seconds, Tennessee played pretty well against BYU. They ran the ball for almost 250 yards. They held BYU to not very much success in the rushing attack. I think BYU's pretty decent. In fact, BYU, I think, is a 3 or a 4-point underdog against USC, and USC has a lot of talent. And by the way, they broke out a brand new freshman quarterback who played out of his mind in that first game. So, I think Jeremy Pruitt's in a rough spot. He needed to win that game. He had to win that game. I bet on that game. That was a crushing defeat. As the ball arced through the air and BYU caught it, I initially thought the player was going to score, and I was like, how does this continue to happen to Tennessee? But they had a lot of improvement, I thought, from week 1 to week 2. I'm not willing to say everything is lost because the SEC East is awful. Vanderbilt is awful. South Carolina is awful, and Jake Bentley is out for the season. Kentucky's quarterback is now out for the season and not very good. You run through the SEC East outside of Georgia and maybe Florida, who I'm not sold on at all. Really, I'm only sold on Georgia. I think Missouri's pretty decent, but outside of those 3 teams, the rest of the SEC East is not very good. I think that there's a possibility that Tennessee can be competitive with everybody but Georgia in the SEC. I don't think Mississippi State's very good. So we'll see what happens against UT Chattanooga, and then more importantly, we'll see when they enter the SEC what happens on the road in Gainesville, how much fight the Volunteers have. There's no doubt Jeremy Pruitt right now is up against it. Tennessee should be 2-0. They should have started off this season 3-0. He hasn't managed to do it. In year 2, I will mention this. Phil Fulmer started off his second season as a Tennessee coach 1-3 and came back and ended up being the most successful Tennessee football coach of all time. But Jeremy Pruitt's got his work cut out for him. He just made an awful analogy about mice on the Titanic and how they're running to try to get to the higher level. Don't compare your program to the Titanic unless it's officially hit an iceberg and you're done. It doesn't make a lot of sense at all. And by the way, there's a lot of people out there who are chirping still about Greg Schiano. Greg Schiano's unemployed, all right? He got fired from the Ohio State Buckeyes because their defense was atrocious and Ryan Day didn't want to keep him. And then mysteriously, he went to go join the New England Patriots, and then he just disappeared, and he doesn't have a job right now, okay? Just because Jeremy Pruitt might not work out does not mean that Greg Schiano was the right choice. In fact, if you recall, I loved the idea of Mike Leach coming here, and Mike Leach has done a lot of good since then. So just because somebody was the wrong decision doesn't mean the person who replaced them is actually the right decision, all right? Tennessee's problem that they've gotten into is, in retrospect, they shouldn't have fired Phil Fulmer. And certainly when they fired Phil Fulmer, they shouldn't have passed over Gary Patterson for Lane Kiffin. And then they shouldn't have gone to Derek Dooley. And then they shouldn't have gone and hired Butch Jones. Of all 4 of those hires, the only one that I thought was decent and potentially inspired was Kiffin. They didn't know he was going to leave after a year. He's been the best of those hires. So I believe that Mike Leach would have been a great hire. That's who I would have hired. That's who I said I would have hired back then. But just because Greg Schiano didn't get the job doesn't mean that he's better than Pruitt. We'll see what ends up happening with Pruitt as we go forward. I think Fulmer hired a guy who reminds him of himself in Pruitt, and we'll see what ends up happening going forward. But the final 30 seconds of that game, indefensible. There's no way to defend Tennessee's defensive positioning and play there. I mean, here's the thing. If you think, this is what frustrates me to no end, the stupidity of athletes who often make awful decisions. In that scenario, if you believe that you are beaten, just tackle the guy. Just tackle the guy on the play and take a 15-yard penalty if they actually call it before the ball gets there. Tackle the wide receiver, take a 15-yard penalty. It's still going to take 10 or 12 or 14 seconds to run the play. You can't get beat deep. It's not rocket science. And if you do get beat deep, don't come running pell-mell out of control and try to make a big play on the ball. Come up, let him catch it, tackle him, go to the ground. I mean, it's just insanely stupid is what it was, especially for a veteran player to make that happen. And yes, I think especially in college football where you don't get to advance to where the pass was, it's a 15-yard penalty. You should never get beat deep in college football. You should always tackle the guy if you're beaten. Just give up the 15 yards. So I did think it was interesting. Urban Meyer's like, what in the world's happened in Tennessee? He said it's a top 10 program. I agree with him. Tennessee gets the right coach, they win. Alabama did not win for a long time when they had the wrong coach at Alabama. Then they get Nick Saban. Everybody forgets all the universe of what was going on. That's the truth. All right, LSU. Massive win for LSU. Right now, Joe Burrow would be my Heisman Trophy winner. All right? Joe Burrow has revolutionized the LSU passing offense. I was blown away by how incredible he was on the road at night in Austin, Texas, in one of the biggest games Texas has hosted in a very long time. He walked into that building and he absolutely owned it. And it's not taking anything away from Sam Ehlinger, but LSU with a passing game is a totally different animal, something that we have never seen before, ever, okay? It is one of the most remarkable things that I have seen, how quickly suddenly LSU becomes a passing team. Other than Zach Mettenberger, OBJ, and Jarvis Landry, which they had for 1 year, maybe back in like 2010, I think-ish, when they were throwing the ball all over the place. This was absolutely extraordinary performance by LSU. I love what I'm seeing from Joe Burrow. 3 over 100-plus yard receivers in the same game. Time for you to start to consider something. Why does this win matter in the larger context? What if Texas goes on and wins the Big 12? What if Oregon goes on and wins the Big 12? Not only is the SEC champ going to get in over the Pac-12 champ and the Big 12 champ, if that arises, the second best SEC team might get in, and potentially the third best SEC team might get in. Okay, when you start to think about this in a larger context, this is massive out-of-conference wins, particularly because next week, Georgia's going to put it on Notre Dame and I think really whip them down in Athens, which means the SEC will have 3 top 10 wins against quality opponents that nobody else has in the entirety of college football. That's why the SEC right now has 3 of the top 4 teams in the country, and I believe 5 of the top 9, which is flat out unheard of, okay? Just flat out unheard of and unbelievable in terms of the overall accomplishment there. Now, Clemson is the defending national champ. Clemson's the defending national champ, but Trevor Lawrence only threw 4 interceptions all of last year. He's already thrown 3. I didn't think Clemson, guys, was very good against A&M. I thought A&M was bad. I thought Kellen Mond missed a lot of throws for Texas A&M. Final score, by the way, thank you to Jimbo Fisher for getting in the end zone for the cover by calling timeout and running kind of the perfect play situation down the stretch. I didn't think Clemson was very good. I thought Clemson was very, very average. I didn't think that they performed at a high level. I didn't think that Trevor Lawrence was very good. He made a couple of decent throws. I think he's been very pedestrian, very average so far this year. There's no way he should be near the top of the Heisman Trophy ratings right now. And I think that there's a little bit of an analogy on a hangover basis without the criminal conduct potentially between Trevor Lawrence and Jameis Winston. If you remember after Florida State went out and was revolutionary good in Jameis Winston's redshirt freshman year, they went undefeated. They won the national championship. They were not very good the next year. They played a ton of close games in a very mediocre and weak ACC. And ultimately, they found a way to get into the playoff, and then they got waxed by Oregon. I'm wondering if that might be the case this year with Clemson, because they don't look to be anywhere near the same caliber of team they were last year. And the ACC, by the way, is awful. The ACC is so bad. The second best team in the ACC was supposed to be Syracuse, and they got run 63-20 by Maryland. It's possible, guys, that Clemson doesn't even play a top 25 team in the ACC in all 8 regular season games and the ACC championship game. That's how much of a gap there is between Clemson and everybody else who is in the ACC. It makes absolutely no sense how awful they are everywhere else. But I'd put a pin in Trevor Lawrence. Almost already equaled his interceptions from last year. A little bit of a sophomore slump to start this season. All right? What about Michigan? Jim Harbaugh remains the most overrated coach in all of college football. He hasn't won his division. He hasn't won his conference. And he got insanely fortunate that freshman kicker from Navy missed a field goal that would have won them the game in the Big House. I loved everything about the effort that Army put forward there. I loved the general on the side of the field when he was saying, let's go for it. The general, did you see that? I might have said Navy a second ago. Obviously, I mean Army. He said, let's go for it. They go for it, and then they line up for that 50-yard field goal. I think it was long enough. From the side angle, it looked like it was long enough, like it might have just scraped over. I would have loved to have seen that happen. Props to Army for the effort that they put forward, but there's no way that Michigan should be in that spot. And some people are going to say, well, Oklahoma was in that spot and Lincoln Riley. All right. If Lincoln Riley has won his division or has advanced the conference championship game, he's won his conference, he's advanced to the college football playoff, and he's led back-to-back quarterbacks in Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray, and now Jalen Hurts looks pretty phenomenal, all to Heisman Trophy either winning in the case of the last two seasons or contending in the case of Jalen Hurts this year, all right? Jim Harbaugh is the most overrated coach in the history of college football. And Lincoln Riley's already beaten Ohio State in Columbus, something that Jim Harbaugh has not been able to do. I'm not saying Harbaugh is an awful coach. He's a 9-3 guy. He's going to get Michigan every year to 9-3-ish, right? But he's going to get waxed in the big games, and for all of the attention and all the acclaim he gets, there's absolutely no way to justify the amount of praise that Jim Harbaugh has gotten since he got to Michigan. He's now in year 5. I think they're going to lose to Wisconsin. I believe they play Wisconsin on the road this weekend. I think they will lose at Penn State, and I think by the time he gets to the Ohio State game, Michigan will be out of the running to make the college football playoff. I think the Big Ten is going to beat up on everybody because I don't think that Justin Fields at Ohio State is a good enough passer for them to go undefeated this year. We'll see. Ohio State on the road against Indiana this weekend. We'll start to get a better sense about them. Lamar Jackson, back over to the NFL for a sec. Lamar Jackson was extraordinary, okay? I loved Lamar at Louisville. I've been skeptical of his ability to transition to the NFL. Last year he was a runner. Tonight, or yesterday afternoon, he was fabulous against the Dolphins. But I will say this. How much of that was Lamar and how much of that was the Dolphins already beginning the tank for Tua campaign because they were indefensibly awful, all right? And so I want to see what Lamar Jackson does against a team that's really good, that is game planning for him. If you watch the postseason last year, the Chargers embarrassed him. Can he step up against a really good team and a really good defense and beat them from the pocket throwing the football? I'm still skeptical, but Lamar Jackson was good in this game, all right? Was good in this game. We'll see whether or not that can continue. But the 5 most impressive, I'll talk about this tomorrow, but the 5 most impressive teams I thought in week 1 were, in no particular order, the Titans, the Ravens, the Cowboys, the Patriots, and probably the Chiefs on the outside a little bit. Would be the teams that I kind of really looked at and thought, my God, these teams are better than maybe I anticipated they would be. I'll talk about that tomorrow. Nick Foles, replaced by Gardner Minshew, who came in and was the best rookie quarterback performance we've ever seen. He was outstanding. The Vikings were the other team I thought was really good. Gardner Minshew was great. Nick Foles out with the broken clavicle. Now the question for Gardner Minshew will be, got a lot of snaps, fortunately for him, in the preseason. What will happen going forward with him as it pertains to his ability with defenses scheming for him? It's a big loss to lose Nick Foles like they did. The Jags continue to look like they're out of sorts. They had another player ejected, a big brawl fight that breaks out. Looked like Leonard Fournette, except on the defensive side of the ball. I'm not sold on the Jags' chemistry, on their team awareness, on their sort of overall positivity associated with them. I'm not buying in on the Jags right now. Dak was phenomenal. He basically turned to Jerry Jones with Kellen Moore now as his offensive coordinator, went in for over 400 yards, the best game I've seen Dak Prescott play. The man wants $35 million a year. My man, if you post a bunch of these perfect passer rating games and you throw for 400 yards and multiple touchdowns like that, you deserve it. All right, I got to give Dak credit. Unlike Zeke, he's shown up and kept working. That's the best game I've seen Dak Prescott play. The Giants got run. Dak was phenomenal. If he wants the big money, he may well be able to get it. All right, let me run through a couple of different details here. This is my SEC power ratings. I do the starting 11 every single Sunday morning. So if you wake up, you're hungover, and you're like, I want to focus more on college football, I do the college football power rankings and everything else. All right, here's my SEC power rankings, 1 to 14 right now. Going to run through them really quick for you. The 14 best SEC teams in order. I've got LSU, number 1. I got Auburn, number 2. I rate teams based on what I've seen on the field, not based on how I think they're going to be, right? So LSU's got the best win, I think, in the SEC so far on the road against Texas. I think that they are number 2, Auburn, right now. Auburn is number 2, all right? Auburn is number 2 because I like that Oregon win. Number 3, I've got right now Alabama. Then I have got Georgia. Then I have got Florida. Texas A&M is 6. Mississippi State is right in the average part there. Kentucky, Missouri, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Arkansas, Vanderbilt, and in last place, I've got Tennessee. All right, what about my top 10? What about my Outkick top 10? Again, I rank the teams in college football without any preseason expectation. I rank them entirely based on how they do against quality competition, road neutral games, Power 5 conference competition. Here we go, 1 to 10. All right, are you ready? LSU, number 1. Auburn, number 2. Clemson, number 3. Alabama, number 4. Georgia, number 5. Florida, number 6. So yes, 5 of my top 6 teams in the country right now are from the SEC. Then I have Oklahoma at number 7. I have not seen Oklahoma play against a quality opponent yet, so it's hard to judge them. Then I've got Ohio State at 8. Same thing. Haven't seen Ohio State play against a quality opponent. After UCLA lost to San Diego State, I question how good Cincinnati was. I've got California in 9th place. Big win that happened late last night late Saturday night into Sunday against Washington. And in the last spot of my top 10 right now, I've got Maryland, who waxed Syracuse and has been on fire offensively. Jordan Davis, their quarterback, already with 7 passing touchdowns, if you haven't kept up. All right. I love all of you. My name is Clay Travis. This has been Outkick the Show. I got to go hop on Fox News now to talk about college football and the NFL officially being back. Then at 4:30 Eastern, 3:30 Central, 2:30 Mountain, 1:30 Pacific, we'll be on talking Lock It In, and Rachel Bonetta is going to have to pay off a major bet loss because my Titans waxed her Cleveland Browns. All that's still to come. My name is Clay Travis. This has been Outkick the Show. DBAP, unless you need to SBAP. If you don't know what that means, look it up. Kisses. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Love you. Thank you, Facebook. See y'all.